Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Let's Talk Worship podcast. I am super excited to come back and revisit our experience in camp. And as you can see, I have my beautiful Kaden with me today, who joined us for a portion of the camp. So I want her today to give you, I already told you guys everything that happened. It was amazing for me. But I would like her, and we will be having a different guest as well, another one, a young man who attended camp. He's also going to be giving us his perspective because I think it's better if you hear it from the youth, not from me, because I like it no matter what. But it's important to know what happened with them. That's what we're doing here. But I want to remind everybody that we meet every Wednesday at 11 a.m. This week, we have a different schedule because after camp, I'm trying to regroup. But make sure you subscribe, that you share, that you like the episodes. It really helps us to get the word out. If you would like to partner with us, thank you so much. I should say thank you to all those that contributed to camp. It was amazing. We were able to do above and beyond what we had planned, and we couldn't have done it without your financial support. So if you're interested in partnering, we're going to be doing other camps. There may be one in Sacramento coming up. Contact me at larosina.malvina@gmail.com, and we can talk about, excuse me, we can talk about how to partner and how, if you have youth or a location, let me know. That's another way in which you can partner with us. We're looking for spaces, homes or farms or big spaces where we can host youth. We're also partnering with Cleaning for the Hungry, which is located in Dinuba, in the valley. They do amazing work, and I'm very grateful for their generosity and also for allowing us to invade their space. It was really great. The kids were able to worship in with the grain and the harvest. I also want to thank Inside Now for allowing me to host the podcast. So if you want to subscribe, you can go to insidenow.co. They are the ones that support me. My apostle is in Inside Now. So thank you, Chris Bassett. He allows me to do this. So I'm very grateful. I also want to thank California Embroidery. Oh, I have this frog in my throat today. California Embroidery, they were the ones who created the shirts for our camp. So good friends of mine, and I love the work they do. So if you need any of your printing needs, they are the people to go with. So I'm very grateful for them. But without any further delays, let's get into the meat. Remember that this podcast is to equip and to train and raise an awareness on what it is to minister unto the Lord. I call it worship. Let's talk worship, but we all worship. But very few have an understanding on what it is to host and minister unto the Lord. We have a vision of restoring the tabernacle of David as described in Amos chapter 9, which is what King David did prophetically, which was all about the presence of God. So our camp was I don't know what it was, an experiment on what it is to host God and what happened when you host the presence of God. So I wanted to allow Kaden to give me her perspective. Kaden, welcome back. You guys have seen Kaden before. She's giving you a little bit of how she sees things. But I love that she was able to join us. Most of our children that came from Washington State. And Kaden is geographically located in the Clovis, Fresno area. So the camp was in that area. So she was able to come for a brief portion of the camp. And my goodness, I'm not going to say anything because I am very biased, but I'm going to let you talk about it. Welcome, Kaden. Talk to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Malvina, for inviting me back every time.
We are regular.
You're the best. Yeah, like Malvina said, I got a chance to spend a couple hours, thank goodness, just with Malvina, and I was like super eager to because I don't know, there's been so much prayer and I don't really know. So much that went into it behind the scenes. So it's really cool to just see this God thing come to life, honestly, and just to walk it out and see what it looked like. I mean, speaking for me, I was just like, I have no idea what this is going to be like, you know? Like, I know what God said. I know, like, how hard Malvina goes for things when she hears his voice. So I'm like, I just
Too
know.
hard.
I'm like, I just know this is going to be good. But yeah, it was a blessing. I mean, just to break it down, I think,
What was your expectation? Let's start there. What did you expect?
oh gosh.
Have knowing me, so I should say, Kaden has been with me in worship and making a mess out of places, and we've experimenting a lot of different things in people's homes,
Yeah.
uh, in a barn. So we've tried this many times.
Hmm.
I'm not going to say they're failures. I think they were learnings.
Right.
First, we brought every person we know, and then some. Then we narrow it down to those that can tolerate it. Then we have adults, we have young people. So we've I think we've done. Um, it wasn't a camp. It was moments of worship where we call
Yeah.
it worship, and we would gather. And to be honest, I was learning. So having experienced all those, good and bad, there's a mixture. What was your expectation for camp, knowing me and knowing the history? I'm trying to put it in perspective so people that watch this show have an idea, as an outsider coming in, what
Mm.
is this about? Some people that are wanting to partner with us don't know what to expect. So
Yeah. Well, I don't know even where to start with that. I think like literally, I expected that there was going to be kids at camp. I expected that there was going to be worship and the whole focus was going to be about Jesus and connecting and loving on each other. Melvina talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but there is a certain kind of like expectation or standard that's kind of thrown out the window when you put a ton of different people together in one space. Melvina was talking about it before, but she was like, it's all ages, all ethnicities, every background. Like, it doesn't matter the church that you went to, it doesn't matter all those things. But I feel like sometimes that can be looked at as like, oh no, like a scary thing. But it's like the most beautiful slash most authentic environment to be in. It's all about Jesus, you know, and like all about his word and just learning, like walking it out as even though everybody's a different age and everybody's from different places, it's like, how can we come together and just learn how to host him and just learn how to spend time with him and like what do we do about it. So I think for me, I had an expectation that it was going to be good and that was it. I really didn't have specific things because like Melvina was saying, we have had different experiences with worship and just learning, like how it works really, like how to host him. And I guess like sometimes what we can do out of striving and just like all the things. So I think for me, I just came in with like, okay, I know it's going to be something that's going to be really good and really special. And honestly, when I left, I felt like similar to like it just exceeded my expectations, meaning that God always says that when he comes, and that's 100% what happened. You leave and the air is like lighter and you're just like so blessed. And I just felt like overwhelming joy from it all. So yeah.
yeah, thank you for saying that, Kaden.
Yeah.
One thing, and you touch a little bit on that. Part of the camp, and this was the first one I've done mixing, geographical locations, people from different locations,
Mm.
also ethnicity,
Yeah.
adults. There were adults. There were, young people, different ages. I had a huge range of age from 30. My son is 29. To 11, 13, very young, boys and girls,
Mhm.
adults, men and women, um, people from a different location, from different countries. We didn't have a large group, but one of the things that I was hoping to prove. This was like an experiment for me, you know. Sometimes you have to test it and see if it's going to work. But if we are going to minister unto the Lord, and if it's all about Him, then our differences should not separate us, or we don't put focus on how you're worshiping or how I'm worshiping, because it's not about me or you, or if we agree. But by the way, we're not discussing doctrine of worship. We are focusing on Him. So one of the requirements that I had was, because some people can be very violent in their worship.
Right.
If you go to a Pentecostal church versus a Baptist church, it's totally different way of doing worship. But that is because they're doctrinally instructing how to do it or what their expectations are. But part of the camp was these kids, you don't even know what church they go to. You don't know their denomination. And I hope you never find out, because it doesn't matter if we all believe in the same Christ, all things in Him, everything was created by Him. Then it should not separate us. And that was one of the first day you weren't there. That was one of the instructions. If we're going to be here, we're here for Him. So don't look at the other person, because if you're focusing on that person, you're not focusing on Him. If you're like the drums, you're focusing on the drums, you're not focusing on Him. So if you're in your own space focusing on Him, He'll show up, and we're all in Him, which is what the scriptures say. And for me, I was delighted to be able to prove that regardless of sex, age, ethnicity, denomination, which nobody knows where they came from. We're not going to discuss who your pastor is, because it's not about the pastor, it's about Jesus.
Right.
So we all come with that, even though we have very different styles and we have very different beliefs. It shouldn't separate us, because it's about Him. So I think everybody came with the same heart. And I think for me, that was a part of the successful part of camp.
Totally.
We were able to enter in regardless of those differences in Him. So He became the main focus. And I think that for me was that was success.
Yeah, totally. I think we were even talking about this before. It's funny, but I think it's like so interesting too, because I was thinking about it and just processing afterward, and I'm like, I didn't know these people, and there were other people that were there. So there was like a group of kids that came from one spot.
By the way, your signal is slow, so I don't know if you need to. Yeah, you're freezing, but that happens all the time with you. That's okay. Keep going. I can hear you.
Anyways, there was just like a lot of people that didn't know each other, I guess, just like a lot of people in the same room together, but you didn't really feel that, because once you are starting to operate in the presence and you're just like starting to operate together, it's like this beautiful, like Melvina said, this like oneness and unity that can't come from anything else, rather than just like a like mind and pursuit of His presence and stuff. So it was so beautiful. And there were just so many moments where I was just like, I think the thing that I took away like constantly was, I love how I kept saying this to like a couple people just like asked me how it was. And I was just like, I love how like Melvina partners with the Lord to create these spaces that like expand my mind on what worship should look like. And it challenges me, because I didn't grow up like seeing anything a certain way. Like I grew up with like the normal Western church culture of worship, And so I just think it's like new language to, I think, what my heart is just like, oh my gosh, yes, like this is like so beautiful and so holy, and takes so many different like roles, and like it just looks so different, and I love that. Like when I left, I was just like, yes, like I feel like it was just more to like what worship is, and it's so Bible, it's so biblical, it's just stuff that we don't necessarily see in our normal structure or anything like that. So it was really special, and I feel like yeah, I know I was so blessed just by it. And
Yeah.
yeah,
One thing, Kaden, you touch on something that the Western culture. One thing I've learned in my experience
yeah.
is this is very intimate.
Mm,
So if you notice, we did not know each other
right.
yet. Was very intimate. You know, it's hard to be intimate with somebody you don't know. Because I don't know who you are, but you really didn't even have a lot of conversation when you came in. The kids know each other, but they
Right.
didn't know you or the other people from the area that came in. They didn't know my son. They didn't know Amy. You know, there were other people from other areas
Mm,
that came in.
right.
So we don't know each other. But again, the intimacy comes from the Lord.
It was so
You know,
beautiful.
yeah, but I also think people need to be open to that because if
Yeah.
you guard yourself and you're going to sit in the back and say, I'm going to watch and see if I like it, then you're thinking about yourself or
Mm,
you're thinking about what you've been told. You're not allowing, you know, you got to have a little bit of trust, I guess,
totally.
that God is really going to lead this. That's
Yeah.
another thing that for me, I had to, you know, a couple of days I step back because usually I try to, you know, tell the kids, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, or direct them. But I think it was so beautiful that there was no middleman.
Mm,
Um, you know, especially the day you were there for that portion. There was no directing, there was no leading, no worship leader, no pastor leader. It was
right.
everybody sitting in a living room
Right.
and there was no actually no communication, human communication, but yet you knew when to sing and you knew when to let Elisha sing, or you knew when not you didn't have to look at Elisha, you didn't even look at him.
Right.
He could go singing and the other one could go sing. The drums kicked in, but it was almost like an orchestra being led by the Holy Spirit.
Mm,
There was no one saying do this, do that. And every time somebody will say something, I love the portion when you said is the radiance of the sun. I think you read
mm,
out of Hebrews.
yeah.
It was so beautiful, and
Mm,
I don't know, it just was flowing without any effort.
right.
So for me, that was another thing, that not just the intimacy, the unity, but also the Lord truly led
Mm,
what you guys were doing.
yeah.
You know, in the past, I'll be in the mic and say, "This is what I hear. This is what I'm seeing." You kick in. You know, I become the conductor. But this time, it was very organic, and no one stepped on anybody's toes.
Right.
It was just flowing in such a beautiful way, and so much revelation,
Mm,
because it was almost like every person was picking up on the other
mm,
person. You know,
yeah.
uh, so for me, that was also something where a lot of the time one person is seeing one thing, but you're not seeing what I see, and then people get very personal. This time, it was almost the Lord led the the moment.
Yeah.
It was just really cool. I don't know.
No, I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think that it's so funny. Like, we all had a heart to seek Jesus and his
Yes.
presence. And I think it's really special too that we even talked about this before. It's like you being led by the Lord on just like random stuff to not even teach, but just like, okay, let's talk about, let's have a conversation about this. Like, even those moments of like prep before you get into those spaces are so helpful practically, like for me as well, because you can enter in and he'll take you, but it's also like entering in with that common like comfortability and that common like knowledge that, you know what? No one else really matters in this room but Jesus. Like, no one else looking at me, like matters. Like, it doesn't really matter the opinions of anybody, or maybe if that sound was weird that I made, because it's like I'm focused on him, and whatever happens with him is going to happen with him. But I just love that because I don't know, I think practically that's so important for me or anybody else to like listen to and just like guard our minds with, or just build ourselves up in the word, so washed and so just like knowing his truth before we're entering those spaces. That way, like our heart's prepared and like everything, it's almost like we're setting ourselves up for him to move. Like we're almost like meeting him and allowing him the space. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
And that's one of the things that I think there was an expectation, like you said, we have had. This is the reason why I'm doing the podcast. A lot of people may not understand it, and I know, you get comments and you get people who say, "But I don't understand that. What do you mean by that?"
right.
I think having not equipping, a discipleship on what it is to host him.
Right.
And myself, I'm learning. And so, like I said, the camp for me was a great experiment.
Always learning,
Because
yeah.
I could prove the unity in the Lord, but also I had identified people because I've tried to disciple a lot of people in this, and some people won't do it. They don't like it because they'll have to lay down their style, their
Right.
music, their ear thingy, their, when you tell people there's no music sheet, there is no chords, no C, no D, no E, then musicians that are highly trained have a tough time laying it all down, and now I got to flow without any of my understanding. So I think the mixture of people that we had are people that have decided it doesn't matter. We let the Lord do it. What I found, one of the biggest resistance is, well, but we don't know that song. Well, there's no song. It's going to be what the Lord wants to sing. He sings over you, like Zephaniah says. He rejoices over you, is singing. Can you let the Lord sing? Can you just sing what he is saying? And for that, you need to be vulnerable and have a surrender. So, musicians that are highly trained have a tough time entering in.
Yeah.
If they're not surrendered. And I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying they're probably the hardest to convince that this can actually work.
Right.
The other thing is the vulnerability of, like you said, maybe making a sound or saying something that doesn't make any sense, because God is saying something. It's very creative environment, actually. And you have to be willing to look like an idiot sometimes, because he's doing things that you wouldn't do in a church. And I don't think you can put this in a regular service. I've always said that there are two movements, because you have to minister to the people. You have to focus on the needs of the people and teach the people and all that. But in this environment, it's not about the people. It's about him.
Right.
So it's two things. And I think they run in parallel, and they're both needed, so I cannot take one versus the other. And there was also a comment from one of the kids that says, you cannot take this into the church, because some of them were experiencing things. They're church kids, and when we were debriefing, and I realized that they know it's going to be very difficult to perform like this or minister to the Lord like this when you have an audience.
Right.
Because you're conscious of what people need or they want or they're expecting. You have a time restriction. You have to do announcements, and people want to go home. There's a teaching, there's a speaker, so I'm learning that there's not one or the other. It's both. They'll be better worshipers because of what they experience.
Right.
I think. So it's trying to realize. And by the way, I personally, and I know this gets a lot of people really upset, so I apologize ahead of time. This is not for everybody. King David knew this. The tabernacle of David, the restoration of the tabernacle of David, was for a kingdom of priests that understood how to host the presence of God. That was the only thing there. There was no sacrifice for the people. There was no atonement. There was no, and I know Jesus had removed the veil and we can all come boldly to the throne of grace. but I can come because I have many needs. We
Mm.
did not pray for each other at all in camp. There was no need for prayer because we are in such presence. I mean, the kids were journaling and downloading, things were being downloaded. Some
Mm.
will say, I got to go journal, and then they will go and journal. The Lord is giving them what's needed, you know? So the horizontal ministry was minimum, fellowship a lot,
Mm.
you know? So we have burgers, we barbecue, we have fire pit, they were swimming, having fun, we serve the community. And even there, you know, they ask us to sing to the food because they wanted the food that's going to the nation to be blessed.
Mm.
You know, so I don't know, I want to believe that we were carrying his presence where we went, you
I
know.
love that.
Yeah, so for me it was a little bit of a different type of ministry, but it doesn't remove the fact that if somebody needs deliverance or needs laying of hands or is not feeling good or whatever, that's not going to happen. But I think it's a different environment. uh,
Mm.
so we need to know, if I'm hosting God, you have to know all your needs are met in there, but not everybody has that um, understanding or desire.
Mm.
So but the Lord will meet them where they're at, you know.
Mm.
So I think the more we do the camps, the more we gather. Sometimes people will call me, oh, we should do it, I have a bunch of youth. Well, we already did the bring everybody in there. But you know what happens when you do that, you
Mm.
get the critical eye, you get the people that don't understand it. This is out of order, you know, because they're comparing it to a church. It's a very different kind of environment. It's not a church. It's not a church. This is not, you know, a training place for, you know, teaching. And I must say, you guys know the word, which I think it's another thing that is big. Even though you guys are very young, I think the kids that attended camp are grounded in the scriptures
Mm.
more than a lot of people. So in that environment of worship, it's easy to flow because the word grounds you.
Mm.
If people don't know the word, it's very difficult to praise correctly. I always say you worship the God you know. If you don't know the word, your worship is going to be really little.
Mm.
You know, the word expands your worship. And
Right.
I think that was one of the things that I've always been impressed is you guys can pull out your Bibles in the middle of worship and sing a word. And
Mm.
that to me is impressive because most people don't know what's in the scriptures. You know,
Mm.
it also allows the worship to be biblical,
Mm.
you know. So you know
Yeah.
how many songs out there don't necessarily match who God
Right.
is,
Yeah.
or they're about us.
Mm.
And that's okay because what he's done for me is a beautiful thing. That's a
Mm.
testimony. But in this environment, we're talking about who he is.
Right.
So it's a little bit different. So it's removing ourselves and it's also making the word our foundation. And I think
Mm.
that's a huge plus with
Mm.
this group of kids. So a lot of times I go to other youth groups where the kids have been, you know, they're playing games and they don't know the word. It's all about salvation, which is great. You can be saved but not know the word. It's a little harder to get
Yeah.
them to enter in. So there is a discipleship that's needed.
I
But
feel like what
go
were you
ahead.
gonna say?
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I feel like what you were talking about earlier just makes my heart leap because it reminds me of just how we're supposed to operate, just like living in Him and in Christ and what it looks like to quote unquote like be the body or just like be people who carry His heart and ministers of His heart. It's so beautiful when you I think it's like what you're saying is just like painting this beautiful picture of just how it works. You're fellowshipping,
Yeah.
you have one mind towards Him,
Yeah.
And like you said, like there if there needs to be deliverance, there will be, but
God will do it.
there wasn't necessarily a need for that, because there was one mind in seeking him and doing that. And out of that abundance there was downloads and downloads, and you're almost like living in this, like, just like walking out your identity. And like I think it's so beautiful. And I think this is something, like, at least personally for me, I'm learning just a lot about, like, literally experiencing his love and fellowship, and then just being able to operate out of that and just like learn about him. It's just this beautiful, like, really
Wow.
healing way to experience and learn about him
Yeah.
outside of all that you knew. And so I think, like, circling around back to, like, just like the momentum and the heart behind camp, like, I loved that. And I think for me, like I said, it was super healing in like random ways. So yeah, that was a side note, but I was just like, gosh, like my
And by
heart.
the way, I should say, it doesn't mean we didn't have opposition or
Right,
low moments. There
right,
was
right.
all kinds of things that happened. But one of the things that I've seen is, even in the opposite, first things get exposed. When you have too much presence, or the focus is on the Lord, anything that's a little crooked shows up. So,
Right.
you also have that exposure. But I think if we make it about the issue, if we make it about how that affects me, or then you're losing the focus on him.
Mm,
So sometimes people have issues, and they feel self-conscious, like, oh, I'm convicted in here, this thing is showing up, and we don't like to know there's something wrong with me. So we go in and try to focus on that. But in the environment, I think it was kept vertically for the
mm,
majority of the time. You get tired, people get, if you're with people for 5 days, you're going to be tired, cranky, hungry, hangry.
mm.
You get a lot of emotions. You're also in one house with a lot of people and youth. There are towels everywhere, and whatever, because they're doing other things. But I never felt, especially as a person leading this and having to watch for all these kids and know what they're doing. I never felt the pressure that God wasn't taking care of things.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have that, are they doing right, or they're not listening, and there was none of that. Really, it was really, our fellowship was great. And when the things got exposed, because we don't agree on everything all the time, we're still human, because we had presence, and then you got to do the everyday living. You got to go to bed at a certain time, and there's curfew. So there were real things. But even there, my desire was, whatever we do it unto him.
Mm,
So, even when we went to serve, to gleaning, I felt we can do this as a service, but will they feel the presence of God? Don't
mm,
go there because you want to minister. No,
right.
we carry presence. And if that's
Mhm.
the case, can these people feel that we do, that we carry him? And
Right.
they should be better when we leave. I used to tell them, when we leave the Airbnb, this house should be in a better place than when we came in, because if we are in him, it's excellent.
Mhm.
And sometimes, we're a little bit careless, but they did. It was great. So I think keeping that focus, it was a reminder all the time. Can we keep God being our focus?
Mm.
And I it did it. So I have no complaints in that area. It was great. Um, I don't know. There's so many good things that I can say,
Mm.
but we are on the 34 minute mark.
Mm.
So what I
Mm.
want to do is, we're going to do part two. We always do the two. So what I'm going to do is, is there anything else you want to say about camp that you didn't say before we go?
I don't think so. I think I aired everything out.
Okay, so let me ask you one last question.
Yeah.
If if you could do something different, what would you do?
Be there longer, probably.
Yeah, okay, so long for you. Be there longer. What would you say was your highlight while you were there?
Mm,
The highest point, regardless, it doesn't matter.
gosh. I don't know. I think there was a moment when the Lord just like burst through the room with like so much joy and very childlike joy. And I think that's always, I love his joy, and I love
Yes.
just like anything childlike. I love it so much. And I felt like that was like impressed on the room. So that was probably my favorite part.
Yeah,
It
if
was a
I were
moment.
to describe camp, I would say overjoyed. That would
Mm,
be the word that I would use. So,
mm,
well, thank you, Kaden. I
yeah.
want to remind everybody that we're always here, and that if you want to connect with me, you can always reach me on my email, lauracina.malvina@gmail.com. You guys heard, camp was amazing. It's
Mm,
different. I'm not going to say this is youth camp or this is traditional retreat. It
mm,
is about Jesus, and it is about ministering unto the Lord, to
mm,
Him. It's about Him. So if you desire to partner with us, you can do it by liking, sharing, commenting on the episode, but also financially. So please contact me. Thank you so much for connecting with us. And we'll be back with Kaden for part 2 to talk about what God's saying. So tune in, and thank you very much for connecting with us. I love you guys, and until next time.
mm.